and welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today we're going to be talking about my Rustival experience at Rustival 3. So, you must have been living under a bit of a YouTube rock if you don't know what Rustival is, but it's essentially an event that was organised initially last year twice by Steph from iDriver Classic, Ian and Carly from Hubnut, and Matt Richardson from Furious Driving. And the concept is anything goes, anything that makes you happy, anything that gets you there, very similar to the Women Drivers Social Club ethos. Is the car that you come in so that you can be part of a day with lots of interesting cars, lots of interesting people that's incredibly welcoming, incredibly supportive. And since the beginning, the Women Drivers Social Club have been really fortunate to be able to have a pretty prominent presence at the event, thanks to Carly and Steph being such big supporters of us and obviously members themselves. So when Rustival 3 was announced, obviously it was first on my list in order to get some tickets for myself, and we decided to take both our cars this time to it. So I got a ticket for myself and Peggy and a ticket for Jamie and Jaffa, and unfortunately Wyvern stayed at home. A little bit closer to the date, it was explained how clubs could get their numbers booked in to be able to have a club space, and we got ourselves, I think it was around 13 cars all lined up together, which is pretty good showing. We have had more in the past, but it was quite tricky to get hold of people through the Facebook group to get them on board as quickly as we needed them to be with the turnaround for when they needed numbers. And we were fortunate there was lots of other WDSC members there, and so they made their way over during our meet and greet, which we'll get onto in a bit. We had a nice group of cars all booked to park up. Very early Saturday morning, we had to get ourselves out and on the road and headed to Gaydon. Because it was so early, we actually ended up going a different way to what we usually do, and we ended up going kind of through the centre of Rugby, probably because it was so quiet that route ended up being faster than going down Foss Way, which made for a nice change, because I've done a lot of drives down towards that part of the world over the last few years, so to be able to mix it up a little bit and go a slightly different way was actually quite nice. And as we got towards Rugby, there was a few cars that we kind of ended up spotting that were most likely going to be there at the show. The giveaway being that they were particularly pristine 80s and 90s cars, which are always very popular at Rustival, and the fact that they had stickers of the various YouTubers in the windows as we either followed them or they went round us on the last stretch of the A14. But all in all, it was a good run, sat at kind of about 60-65 along the A14, and then the other slower speed limits as we wind our way kind of down and across to Gaydon. We got there for about 10 to 9, I think it was. We had hoped to get there a little bit earlier, but it is kind of nearly 2 hours away for us really, and it's not far enough to warrant booking a hotel or whatever nearby, but still, with such an early start as this often is, quite a bit of a commitment to get up at the the time that we got up to go to, were always very worth it. The Women Drivers Social Club had been filling up nicely, and so when I arrived we had 2 DSs on either end, as Sarah and Ashley had been camping locally at the Citroen weekend that was happening nearby, so they'd got there pretty early and marked out our area nice and clearly, and so we popped some flags under their wheels so that people knew the nice stretch of the Women Drivers Social Club. And it is really nice this year to have multiple flags, because then people can see kind of the whole area, and it's a little bit easier to try and stop people trying to claim our spots, because I think in previous years we've spent a lot of time running up and down trying to make sure that people didn't park in the Women Drivers Social Club area. Once we were all set up and we'd said hello to the various people on the stand, got to meet some new faces and catch up with some faces that we hadn't seen since the last Rustival, it was time to have a bit of a wander round. And I was quite fortunate this time, because the first one I had stuff to do on the stage, the second one I had stuff to do on the stage, and a photographer there taking photos for some magazine work. So I actually got to properly go around and enjoy the show this time. So we grabbed ourselves a hot drink and had a little look at some of the trader stalls that were there. There was a pretty funny stickers stall, so snagged a few of those, and then started walking around. And one of the first things that caught my eye was a Sherpa Royal Mail van that was kind of off to one side at the time, having, I think, its wheels pumped up before it was driven out onto display, and it was honestly so cool. One thing about me is I love post. I love getting post, and I love sending post, and so I have a real interest in like postal vehicles. I love the Postal Museum in London, and so yeah, to see one of them, and as pristine as it was, because it was absolutely perfect, and the sliding doors and everything, it was amazing to see. And I spent a lot of time walking around that whilst my sister and her fiance just kind of were like, okay, this is a weird level of interest to take in this particular vehicle, but it was really cool. And I wasn't alone, because there was some people standing nearby that were like, I would do anything to buy that. So it was definitely a nice spot, and a really good start to the day. We then started walking around some of the other cars, and in previous years, by the time that we've got kind of up to the top car park, we've been quite late into the afternoon, and it's quite gappy and it's quite empty. So we decided to go up to the top car park and do that to start with, and then start doing some of the other bits and bobs later on in the day, because we thought that might mean that we get to see some of those cars up there before they start going off. Because the thing is, when it starts as early as it does, even when it doesn't have a torrential downpour dead on 3 o'clock like it did this year, people do start to leave a little bit early. And so kind of about 3 o'clock, as soon as the awards and stuff have happened, people do start packing up and leaving. So it is good to try and make sure you get round as many of the cars as possible before that point, and then kind of do the museum stuff, which is what we ended up doing. So yeah, we went up the top there, had a nice walk around there. On the way past, we went past the stands for the merchandise for each of the 3 YouTubers, and Steph had a £10 vintage rail with a sign that I believe was lovingly made by Richard quite last minute, using various interesting choices of font to make it seem as much like a jumble sale as possible. And there were some great little pieces on there, and my sister managed to find some stuff that was going to tie in nicely with the colours of her car. And then we came back to the stand a little bit later and realised that a few other little bits had gone out, and there was a really nice dark blue dress with tulips on. Tulips are my favourite flower, and so I was like, well, it's dark blue to match Peggy and it's tulips, so I have to have it. So big thank you to Steph for having the lovely vintage rail out and having them so reasonably priced that we couldn't say no. There were some absolutely stunning cars in that top bit up there. There was a beautiful Daihatsu camper van that I spent a lot of time looking at and enjoying. A very nice yellow scimitar that had caught our eye on the way in, and just the amount of stuff that you go around walking around and never expect to see anything, and yet they're here. It is a great show for just really random, unusual stuff. There was what I think is a Bond mini car that had this most ridiculous 2 tiny seats in the back. So the idea that it was going to be a 4-seater was just something else, and did give the 4 of us a little giggle as we were walking round. We spent a good chunk of time up at that top bit, but then realised that we were quickly approaching 11 o'clock, which is when I'd put out on the Facebook group that the Women Drivers Social Club would have a little meet at the cars to be able to get a group photo, have a little chat, and for people to have the opportunity to grab any little bits of merchandise and stuff off me that they wanted to. So that was really nice. I had this idea for a photograph, and everyone was very willing and nice about the fact that it was to try and get this photograph, but I think it turned out pretty good, and quite a nice photo, and different to our other group photos that we've had at Rustival over the years. It was great to catch up with everyone again, because some of us we'd obviously seen the week before, but some of us we hadn't seen since the last Rustival, because it is kind of a real mix as to who turns out for what with the Women Drivers Social Club. So it is nice to have a bit of time to see everyone and to make sure that as many people are there as we possibly can. Then we started walking around some of the other club stands, some of the other displays. Mavis the snail, owned by Claire and Mush, was actually on the iDriver Classic stand, which was really nice to see. And yeah, it's a big show, but it turns out that it is kind of doable if you have a real clear plan and you set off pretty early to do it. But by focusing on seeing the cars this year, I didn't actually spend a lot of time looking and watching the stage, where there was really good stuff going on as well. I walked past at one point, and I know that Claire, in her capacity from Borough Classic, iDriver Classic Steph, and I think Paul from her work were talking about kind of the future of classics and how to keep people interested and engaged with them, and that was really good to see. And there were some really good topics being put on the stage, which I think really add to the event. But I focused on kind of getting around the cars this time, going up and seeing the little auto jumble bit in the upstairs of the museum, where I got a good few bits. And yeah, just having a bit of a more chill experience of Rustival, which was really nice. We ended up having kind of a little bit of lunch and then doing the museum, because we covered most of the cars outside. And it was nice to see that since my last visit, some of the stuff had moved around in the museum. There was some other stuff on display, and there was a new kind of area all about the sounds and music associated with car ownership, which, considering I started this podcast because I enjoy and missed the sounds of a classic car when Peggy had to go away for a bit of work, was something that I really enjoyed going around and having a look at and seeing it all celebrated. And I think there's definitely more that could have been done with that display, but it was an interesting concept to see, and we really enjoyed having a look around, and it highlighted some different cars to what we usually see at the museum, which was nice. And we also particularly enjoyed the auto memorabilia section. I don't think I'd been in that the last couple of times that I'd been there, because it is kind of quite tucked away, but you do spot some really interesting and unusual stuff in there, so that was really good. We also went round the Jaguar collection and the exhibition centre, and then it was kind of about time to start thinking about heading back to our cars, but it had started to be close to wrap-up time, and we realised that we hadn't actually gone and had a look at the photos that had been taken on the way in. And I'd gone into this saying, oh, I just want to have a look, I don't actually want to buy the photos, and then ended up walking away with 3 photos of both Peggy and Jaffa in one, and then one of Jaffa and one of Peggy, and getting well and truly my wallet wiped out. But they were really nice pictures, and it was nice to have a pair of the photos of us driving the cars, so that was fun, and they do look quite nice on display in our lounge. But because I was stood in the tent whilst that was happening, my sister had been through and got her photos, she's headed back to the car. It's just started massively throwing it down with rain, and they're ending the event with a blast of the horns in memory of a gentleman from the Mondeo team that had unfortunately passed away after the last Rustival and before this one. And I can't get to my car because I'm kind of in the middle of doing a transaction, but thankfully my sister had taken my car keys, and so she did the horn on my car, Alex did the horn on her car, and Jamie did the horn on his car. So Peggy did get to beep her horn, and I did get to poke my head out of the tent to film it and watch it all happening, which was pretty cool. Quite a range of horns all on display from the massive variety of vehicles that were there. We ended up leaving kind of about 4 o'clock, having finished up in the collection centre and gone back to that. And so we'd had a pretty decent day out, went to a little pub nearby to get some dinner before starting the trek home. It really was a bit of a trek. I don't know what it was about driving on that day, but everything seemed to so long, such a long drive. Having done long drives the weekend before and them not felt quite so long, I think we were just tired and stuff, so we ended up stopping off briefly at Rushden Lakes on the way home just to kind of have a bit of a driving break and make the last 40 odd minutes home seem not quite so bad, but well worth it. It was a fantastic day. It was great to see everyone, to see the massive range of cars, and yeah, looking forward to finding out what the plans are for next year, though I doubt those who have been busy involved in the organising want to be thinking about that just yet. But yeah, that was our Rustival experience. It's been great to see all the videos of everybody else that's been putting out on YouTube, spotting our cars and stuff in them. I do think that Ian from Hubnut got my sister's car wrong though. I think he called it a Sunbeam Stiletto, and I think she'll be pretty fuming at that, as she's very proud that it's a Hillman Imp Californian. And so aside from that, very good to kind of reminisce through all of the videos, see things and spot things that even though I spent a lot of time making sure I saw as much as I could, I might have missed. But that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed kind of my perspective of Rustival, and in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Drive safely and happy motoring.